Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Guevara.
So usually I start off with a joke, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to jump right into it because I tend to get a little too jokey, and then I find myself 15 minutes into it. I'm like, oh man. But I do want to talk about something that I recently saw on Facebook. There was this video. Many of you might have seen this. It was a mom who live streamed her punishing her daughter. Some people call it beating, but she essentially was admonishing her daughter and kind of smacking her around because she found out that her daughter had been having sex in her home, and she had also been sharing pictures, I guess naked pictures of herself with others. And so her mother sort of, had the intention that, okay, well, if you want to, put it out there, well, guess what? I'm going to humiliate you in front of the world. And she very specifically asked the world to share that video and to make it viral so that she could scare her daughter into making that kind of mistake again. So this sparked a really wide debate online. Everybody was in on it, and they fell on either one side or the other. Was this, cruel and unusual punishment, or was this, justified? Is this a mom who's really watching out for her daughter and helping her? And I don't really care to get into that debate. What I'm really interested in is where that anger comes from in parents, where that frustration comes from, that idea that, what you did, it made me that mad that I'm going to go to some extreme, fear tactics, this extreme to discipline the kid. So I have 4 children under 6. Some people ask why. I say it's because I'm a champ. I'm competitive, right? If anybody's going to do it, I'm going to do it. But anyway, my oldest son, his name is John Paul, and this kid's adorable. He's 4. He's got a natural comedic, mentality. He's just, the guy is like, it comes so easy for him to make people laugh, and most of the time he's probably not even trying to be funny. He's just a hilarious kid. He's really affectionate, but he's also really sneaky and lazy. He loves technology. He loves phones. Very often, he sneaks away with a phone and goes into a closet, to play with the phone. And it's something that he just can't get away from. But when I find out, and I find him in the closet being sneaky like that, I get on him. And I come down pretty hard too. Most of the time I'm somewhat of a laid back person, but when I get intense, I get pretty intense. I'm actually in the military, and I guess it's also a part of I guess the way that I get when I'm passionate about something. I usually go 110 miles an hour in whatever direction I happen to be going to. When I was young, that ran me right into brick walls, but now, sometimes it actually is okay. Anyway, I come down on him pretty hard sometimes. Other times when, we ask him to clean, like he'll sigh, and I'm going to be like, I don't want to clean up, and I'll be like, you better clean up, right? What did your mom tell you to do? You better get over there, you better clean up that stuff. If I find you messing around, because he'll go in the corner and be like, whatever, and he'll just like move around his toys, back and forth. Eventually he just starts playing with his toys, and I'll come back and I'll be like, what the heck? What did I just tell you? Like, I just told you to pick up that stuff. Why are you not listening to me? I told you to clean up. What? And I'll be like, hey, you're not listening right now? What the? Focus like this. But here's the crazy thing about that. It drives me absolutely nuts, but the crazy thing is that I think why it drives me so nuts is because this kid is a reincarnation of me. He's exactly... Hey, hold on. I'll give you the mic maybe at the end. Oh, shoot. So, that's not in here. So I've realized, that I get on him most when I see him becoming like me. When I was young, I was exactly like that. I was lazy. I hated manual labor. All I wanted to do was be inside all day long, watching TV or playing video games. My Super Nintendo and those ones from back in the day. That's all I wanted to do. I'd be sitting there, and Mom would call me and, hey, did you do your homework? Yeah, just give me a second, Hey, I need you to clean up. Yeah, I'm just let me finish up this game. That's all I wanted to do. It was very, very difficult for me. And I see him growing those same tendencies. And as soon as I see that, I immediately want to correct it. And like I said, I come down very, very hard on him. I think the reason that I come down so hard on him is because when I see him taking that path, immediately I think to myself, I don't want him to have those same struggles. I don't want him to have the same consequences, to experience those same struggles and consequences that I went through. I want to save him, but for some reason my immediate reaction is to come down, is to come with a very negative approach, to get angry at him. And I see that this is probably the struggle of most parents. Most parents, when I go around and I speak, one of the biggest, most common questions that I get is, how do I prevent my kids from making the same mistakes as me? How do I talk to them about this stuff? How do I make sure that they don't end up just like I was when I was a kid? So I recognize at 29 years old, some of you who are a bit older might be asking the question, what the heck is this kid going to tell me? I don't have any teenagers. I've never raised any teenagers. But I do have the unique experience of being able to travel somewhat around the nation, meeting a lot of people, many, many, many young people, and many parents. And I see a lot of the same struggles. And as I'm going through some of these struggles with my own children, I've noticed that these struggles are not unique, right? These struggles are shared amongst people of different cultures from different parts of the nation and even sometimes different parts of the world. It's not even just in parenting. This is in leadership, in the military, in business, and in sports. There's a great lack of great leadership, right? And this is the struggle that I see. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and pull a little bit from my experience in some of these areas of interacting with young people and also interacting with parents, and then also some of the experiences that I've learned from other great leaders in business and in the military and other aspects of life. So like the mom who streamed her punishing her daughter on Facebook, I think when we see our kids begin to make serious mistakes, we get this fear that they're going to follow right in our footsteps, and that fear induces a very negative reaction and then a negative form of discipline. You're familiar with this, right? You better not, you shouldn't, I better not catch you, no, 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 no. I call that negative steering, right? So like every time you see them go in the wrong direction, no. You see them going in the wrong direction, no. And you're trying to steer them in the right direction by simply making sure that they're not, going out of bounds. This is a strategy that I call coaching not to lose. And I want to suggest a different approach, a different strategy that I believe will help. So coaching not to lose, that idea is, if you think about a competitive sport like basketball, no one wants to lose, but if you're a coach and you're going up against a team who is bigger, they're taller, they're stronger, they're somewhat intimidating, your fear is to not get embarrassed, right? Many times, people who go up against these teams that seem to be already from the outset built to destroy them, they have this great fear. Oh, I don't want to get embarrassed. I hope they don't blow us out, right? Coaching not to lose or playing not to lose is like when you have maybe a very small lead and you're conservative, and so you hold the ball, right? You don't want anybody else you don't want the other team to get the ball, because then they have the opportunity to make a shot. You're so afraid to make mistakes. You're so afraid to make mistakes that you don't want to do anything. You don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to take shots because you might miss the shot. If you miss the shot, the other team gets the ball. If you miss the shot, you miss your opportunity. You're so afraid that you end up losing. You end up losing, right? It's the aggressive teams, the teams that go out there and are aggressive, that are ones that end up winning. You might have heard this before: winners win and losers lose. If you're afraid of losing, you're going to lose. Because if what's on your mind is losing, that's what you're going to end up doing. So think about this for a second, right? What great coach comes into the locker room and motivates their players by saying, look, you better not lose tonight. You better not lose. Don't make any mistakes. Don't screw up. You screw up bad, I'll kick you off this team. How many games is that team going to win? Yeah, probably 0, right? Or very little. Because that's not motivating to the team. The team's not going to get any kind of inspiration from that. I mean, the goal obviously is, you don't want to lose, you want to win. But that approach is something that I think a lot of parents take. You better not have sex before marriage. You better not mess up. I know you're going out with your friends. If I find out you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, you're going to get it when you get home, right? That's the kind of approach that many parents take. That's like a coach going into the locker room saying, I have no confidence in you. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to lose, but you better not. The greatest coaches don't simply try to protect their players from experiencing loss, from experiencing mistakes. They set big goals. They set these dreams of a championship. They come in and the first thing they do is say, what do you want? Do you guys want to win a championship? Are you just here, or do you want to do something great? Do you want to win a championship? And of course everybody's like, yeah, we want to win the championship. And they're like, well, I believe in you. I know you can win the championship. I believe in you. I've seen you. I've seen the talents that you have, the skills, the abilities, the potential. I know you have that potential, and I'm going to help you. This is our goal. Our goal is the championship. That's what we're after. And I want you to keep in mind that I'm going to push you. I'm going to punish you. You are going to run sometimes until it hurts, until you throw up. You are going to feel the pain of work. But you know what? The goal is the championship. If that's what you want, that's where I will push you. They first set goals. They set that goal of the championship, and then the team has something to work towards. The team has something to remind themselves every time that they are in some kind of, difficult position, whether it be staying later to work harder, whether it be just their muscles are sore and they're hurting, or they're down and out, or whatever. That is their constant goal. It's not about losing, it's about winning. It's all about the championship. They get these great coaches, they get their players to believe in what everybody else thinks is impossible. They inspire in their hearts, and they get them to believe in their hearts that they can win a championship no matter what. And these are all the greatest stories that we love in sports, right? The teams that everybody rolls out, the Spurs that get rolled out every single year, right? They're too old, they're too, slow, whatever. These guys could never do it. These guys are too small. These guys are too weak. They're from a small school. They're from a small city. When those teams wreck the Giants, when David beats Goliath, something stirs in our hearts, this great truth that we can overcome whatever obstacle, that we can do great things, that we have a great love story written for us, and the greatest coaches inspire their teams to do so. And this is my suggestion. This is my urging to you, parents. You guys who are parents now, and you guys who will be parents, is that you take the approach to not simply try not to lose, but to win, to be aggressive, and to set goals, to go after those goals aggressively. And so here it goes. This is the winning strategy. The first thing you got to do, or the biggest thing you got to do, is you have to overcome fear, the fear of losing. Fear is really an amazing thing because it's really not a thing that exists, right? Fear is always about something that hasn't happened yet, or something that might happen. And because of that, that means that it also might not happen. So fear is always, always about a potential, something that can be changed, right? It doesn't have to happen. But if you think about all the greatest fears that we have, fear of losing your job, fear of death, fear of tragedy, all of these fears are just concerned with those things that may or may not happen, just like losing, just like mistakes. So if the thing that you fear hasn't happened yet, then that means there's still time to do something about it, to change the outcome. Even if tragedy has already struck you, you can still take those actions to do something to change what happens next. So the way you conquer fear is with action. That is how you conquer fear. It's with action. You know that the people who are afraid of failing their test, the people who are afraid of losing a game, the people who are afraid of public speaking, those people are simply unprepared. They haven't done the work to build up the confidence to know that when the moment comes, they'll shine. They're unprepared, they're uneducated, they're unmotivated, or they're just unwilling. Whatever it is, they haven't done the work. Most fears, all fears, are really conquered by just simply doing something, getting out there and doing something about it, putting in the work beforehand, so that when the moment comes, you know you don't have to rely on simply that moment. You're relying on months or years of work. The more you work to conquer those fears, the more you strike at them, the more you'll see success, and therefore the more you'll grow that confidence that the next time you'll be able to conquer that fear. I think most parents' problem is not that they don't love their children. It's not that they don't try to teach their kids, but that they let fear dictate an action in difficult areas. You heard Christopher West say this last night. How many of you had your parents talk to you regularly about sex and marriage, the beauty of sex, its purpose? But I'm going to take it a step further. How many of you had your parents admit to you their mistakes, where they failed, were open about those things, and then showed you how they worked through those things? Or even if they didn't conquer those things and work through those things, at least just share with you the mistakes, the shame, the embarrassment that they have in their life. Not many people, right? It's very, very difficult for parents to be vulnerable in front of their kids. I remember one day I had just recently graduated from high school, and my mom came and woke me up in the morning and said, "Your grandfather's had a heart attack." And she said, "Get ready, we're going to go and we're going to drive to go see him." I was just woken up, and then, so I was kind of unsure what was going on exactly, but like for whatever reason, my first instinct was to walk out into the hall. I walked out and I looked down the hallway, and my parents' bedroom was open. And I saw my mom walk in there, and she put her hand on my dad's shoulder. And my dad put his hand over his face and began to weep, sob, like a little baby. And I had never seen my dad cry before like that. I'd never, ever witnessed that. And it rocked my world. It stayed with me so much that even to this day, I remember exactly what he was wearing. Before that day, I never really thought about it. I never really realized that my dad could be vulnerable like that he was a human person with these kind of emotions, that he struggled, that he had pain and sadness and sorrow, and that he could cry like that. I never really realized that because I never really saw that part of him. Your kids need to know that you are human too, that you have struggles, that you have pain, that you have weaknesses, that you make mistakes. They need to know that. They need to understand that. Isn't it a cliche that how many kids say, "My parents don't understand. They have no idea what I'm going through. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like to have this kind of pain. They don't know what it's like to feel this kind of rejection. They don't know what it's like to screw up like this and to have to live with this guilt." How many kids say that? Why can they say that? Because they don't know that their parents do know what it's like. They don't know because their parents so often are so unwilling to be vulnerable in front of them and to let them in there. If they see in you that you're not afraid to admit your mistakes and that you're not too proud to seek advice and help, then guess what? At the times when they need help, when they need advice, when they're afraid, they will seek you. They will follow you and your example. So many parents, they want that. They want their kids to come to them. Let me know when you need help. Let me know if you're afraid. Let me know if you make a mistake. Or just, let me into that. Why won't you talk to me? Well, if you're not willing to do that yourself, then guess what? They're just going to end up following your example. This is a theme that you'll hear throughout this talk. It's so much less about what you say to your kids than what you show them. Your kids will do what you show them before they do what you tell them. It's so much more about your actions. If you show that you are willing to be vulnerable, that you are willing to admit when you make a mistake, that you're willing to come and ask forgiveness or look to seek help from someone else, then they will do the same, and they will come right to you when they're in those moments when they need your help the most. Most parents leave these areas untouched. They fear that opening up to their children, being vulnerable, they fear this humiliation, the shame of revealing their past mistakes, and they fear that somehow their children might see them, or it might change their image, that they might lose some sort of respect. I think a lot of times parents are afraid to be vulnerable because a lot of times they're afraid to revisit those deep and dark wounds that they tried to bury so long ago, right? I'm going to guess, I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to guess that this Facebook mom who live streamed her daughter, who went to such great lengths to humiliate her and to punish her, was struggling with something very, very deep. A great pain that she saw her daughter running right into. Instead of protecting her daughter from it, she unleashed even more upon her. But I bet you anything that most people like that in those situations are dealing with a great, great wound themselves. And that wound just gets reopened, and all of those feelings of pain, of rejection, of whatever it is that they are dealing with, that they try to bury, just explodes, and all of their fury, their anger, and their pain against whatever happened to them becomes unleashed on their children. So fear of exploring those areas oftentimes dictates inaction. This is why I think a lot of parents also say, how can I tell my kids not to smoke when I can't quit myself? How can I tell my daughter not to have sex before marriage, not to get pregnant when I got pregnant at 15 years old? Not all inaction is the same approach, though. I would argue that, again, the Facebook mom, even though she took action, she took the wrong action, the easy way out. It's so much easier to put somebody else on the chopping block, right? To humiliate somebody else, to put their sins out into the world, and it's so much more difficult to target the real enemy, which is their own sin, their own pain. Can you imagine if this Facebook mom, instead of going on, and making this viral video humiliating her daughter, can you imagine if she went out and made a video after she found out about her daughter? Made a video where she revealed to the world the sins of her past, the mistakes that she made. She made herself vulnerable before the world and said, you know what, my daughter made some mistakes, and the only difference between her and I is that the internet is around and her mistakes are spread on the internet. And she can't pull them down. Everybody gets to see them. But my mistakes were the same or worse. The only difference is that they're not out there for everybody. Can you imagine if she stepped in front of the bullet for her daughter? Her daughter would have run to her with open arms, and the healing for both of them would have begun. Think about this like the prodigal son, right? What is the prodigal son? Well, the prodigal son goes and he gets the inheritance from his father, and then he goes and he squanders that on sex and all other illicit things. And then when he loses everything, he goes back to the father, and I'm sure he's terrified. He's terrified to go back to the father, to be humiliated. But he's got no other choice. He's going to die of starvation if he doesn't come back to the father. But what does the father do? Does he humiliate him? No, he brings him in and he runs to him. The kid does not run to the father runs to the kid, and he embraces him. At his weakest moment, at his most vulnerable time, he embraces him, and he brings him back into the fold. Think about this for a second. Coaches who put the loss on their players' shoulders lose the respect of their players. Nobody wants to play for them, right? Coaches who take the loss on themselves gain the respect of their players. And then the next time they go out, guess what? The players want to play for them. They want to work hard. I heard this before, and I thought this was, completely accurate. I heard somebody say that, the best players, the champion teams and the championship players, they don't want to win the game for the trophy. They don't want to win the championship for the bragging rights. They want to win the championship for their coach. It's always because they want to do something for their coach. They want to give back to their coach everything that their coach gave to them. And the greatest champions, the greatest winners, always go right to the podium and say, I want to thank the people who brought me here. I want to thank the coach who believed in me, who always pushed me, who never stopped making me believe that this was possible. I want to thank that coach. It's the same in real life. Same in real life. Your job is to be a coach. And if you put all the losses and all the mistakes on your children, you're going to lose them. You take those on yourself, then they will work hard. They will work hard to please you, to make you proud, I promise. Instill in your kids that the only way to win is to not be afraid of failure, to not be afraid to lose. The only way to instill that in your kids, though, is to believe that yourself, right? that's only part of it. So think about it this way. Watching a team of giants come off of the bus and being intimidated or not intimidated and thinking you can beat them doesn't win you the game, right? Just simply being arrogant and saying like, oh, we can beat those dudes. I don't care. I don't care how big they are. I don't care how tall and athletic. We can beat them. That's not what wins you the game. It's part of it. Not being afraid is part of it, but it's not what wins you the game. As I said before, successful coaches, they set big goals and they inspire their players to believe in those things that everybody else thinks are impossible. They also invest significant time and energy and effort into training their players, to training them. My advice is first that you start early as possible. Our kids are 5, 4, 2, and we have a 10-week-old now. And even at 4 and 5, we're teaching our kids this stuff. Already right now, our daughters are learning that girls are motherly. They have this motherly instinct. And then we're teaching the boys that, hey, boys protect. You protect your sisters. You protect your mommy. You respect that lady, right? Already they're learning this stuff in very basic language, but we're already starting to build the building blocks, the foundation. It's never too early to start that stuff. That's the first thing. You start early. Think about it like from, again, sports and dance and stuff. How early do people start putting their kids in sports and in dance? My dad had me in basketball at like 3 years old. He was already like yelling at me and making me cry. I wasn't in there, but because of earlier that. But seriously though, right? We put our kids, we want them to have those skills. We know that at some point we want them to, be great at basketball, to be great at dance or whatever, and so we put them in there early. We start our kids in education at 5 years old. Already at 5 years old, we push them out. Hey, go learn, right? No different than in theology and in philosophy, in the faith. We have to start giving our children that at a very early age. Appropriately in basic language, and we go from there, but we got to give it to them early. When your kids get older, you got to then help them turn those dreams. You got to inspire in them the ability to dream big, impossible dreams. But then you got to turn those dreams into goals. One of the greatest things that you hear from some of the greatest leadership speakers is that goals have to be very specific and tangible. It's very specific and tangible. Be a great player is not specific. If a coach says, hey, I want you to be a great player, I want you to be a great team, the team's not going to go anywhere. A championship is a specific goal, something you can work towards. There's an end where you can say, I did it, I accomplished it. And you have a lot of little goals in between, little milestones. It's the same way in business, it's the same way in the military, it's the same way everywhere. Everybody needs tangible goals, realistic goals that push you towards what everybody thinks are unrealistic goals. Ultimately, there has to be a goal, right? You have to help your kids set those things. Simply coming and telling them, hey, you better not have sex, or you better be a good kid, don't let me find out, you get in trouble at school, whatever, that's not going to help them. You got to give them something to work towards. And when the greatest thing about that, this works in business and leadership and in sports, but the greatest thing about that is that when they do mess up, when there's a time to teach them, you can place the lesson within the context of the goals, right? Hey, what happened? Tell me about it. Where did you go wrong? What didn't you do? All right, so what did we talk about? What are you trying to do? What are you supposed to do? This is what we do with our kids even right now. Like, hey, what did we tell you? If you clean up, then we'll give you the ice cream, right? But you didn't clean up. Don't you want the ice cream? Yeah, of course. Okay, I'll give you the ice cream. But you just got to focus. You got to remind yourself, if I clean up, I get the ice cream. And this is something that, again, they get to work towards that. Eventually, we push that from ice cream to something better, right? Like, hey, what do we tell you if you, are nice to your sister? If if you're not fighting, if you do something, if you're sweet to her, if you, protect her, if you share with her, we'll let you play video games later. We'll take you to the movies, whatever, right? They need something to work towards in the goals and the rewards. Lou Holtz, a famously accomplished football coach, is known for his story of setting 107 seemingly impossible goals, right? Those goals included meeting with a pope, having dinner at the White House, becoming the head coach of Notre Dame's football program when he didn't have a job, and winning a national championship. 107 of these really tangible goals that everybody else thought was nuts. This guy accomplished almost every single one of those goals, save for a few. You can go on his website and see every single one of those that he checked out, jumping out of an airplane, every other crazy thing that at 21 years old or whatever, he decided, this is what I'm going to do. Before my life ends, these are the things I'm going to accomplish. Success doesn't happen by accident. It is calculated. It's designed. You don't just win games, right? It's also not simply as a result of hard work. I think about it this way. You can run very, very hard in the wrong direction and never get any closer to the finish line. You got to know where you're going to. You got to give your kids that direction. Don't just get them to work hard, get them to work in the right direction. Otherwise, they'll wander aimlessly right into trouble, right? Think about it. Little kids, all they do is wander into danger. You got to give them the direction, show them where the good stuff is, show them where the toys are, show them where they can have some fun. If you help them establish goals in school and sports, but not in their faith or in relationships, it's the same thing. They will wander right into trouble. Again, when things get very hard, you can remind them of what they're striving for, what they're working towards, what the ultimate goal is, which obviously is heaven, right? Here's a great example. Don't have sex before marriage it's not a specific goal. That's very aimless. Be a good person, same thing, not a specific goal, very aimless. Save your kiss for marriage is a specific goal. Read this chastity book before the end of the month is a specific goal. Those are the kinds of things that you have to get them to work towards, right? Stop telling them to not lose, to not have sex before marriage. Start giving them little ways to work towards not just not having sex, but having a glorious relationship, a glorious marriage, being a glorious witness. Hey, even maybe we all need these same kind of reminders, these goals of pray a rosary a week, pray a rosary a day. I need that kind of stuff constantly. I struggle with managing all the craziness I have in my life and making sure that I'm reprioritizing and keeping, the proper goals right at the forefront. Remember, they just have to be very specific, but also don't let them get away from dreaming, right? Crazy things, impossible things. You could never do that. You could never, right? For some reason, parents, one of their greatest struggles is encouraging and allow their kids to do that kind of stuff, to not just stay with the realistic and grounded things, but to go out there and just dream whatever God stirs in their heart. Also remember to resist the urge to give them constant reminders of when they're failing, of the mistakes that they make, of how far they are from the goals, and of the consequences. The greatest coaches encourage their players to forget about their mistakes, to have no conscience, right? You might have missed that shot, you might have missed that shot, you might have missed that shot. You've been having a horrible game, you missed every single shot you have. But when it comes to the end of the game, guess what? Michael Jordan still gets the ball, right? Even if he missed every single shot up to then, the coach still puts the ball in his hands at the end of the game. And Michael Jordan just hits it almost every time when he was in his, as prime and when he was winning championships, almost every time. Doesn't matter what happened up to that point, he'd still take the last shot and he'd win the game. And everybody around trusted him to do it, no matter where he was, right? The greatest coaches inspire that in their kids. I don't care what you've done up to now. It doesn't matter what mistakes you've made. Forget about all that stuff. It's about right now. What are you going to do now? You need to still take that shot. You need to have that confidence that no matter how many shots you've missed, you can still make the next one. You can still win the game. It's always about reminding yourself and them that there's a greater purpose, that something greater is at stake. It's very easy to look at the big picture and to see their mistakes as kind of, minimal. Their mistakes are kind of just little setbacks in that ultimate big picture of where they're going. You got to constantly remind yourself of that. You got to constantly remind them of that. Another thing great coaches do is study. They study film. They study from other great coaches and other great leaders. They study film of their own team, and they study film from other teams, right? They're always constantly thinking about ways to improve, how to adjust, new things to try out. They also seek the counsel of others. No head coach doesn't have assistant coaches. No head coach doesn't have people that they look up to and that they admire, that they go to when they need some help, when they need advice. When parents ask me how to help their kids to avoid their same mistakes or how to help them to live holy and chaste lifestyles, I tell them to be their greatest examples. The greatest coaches and the greatest leaders are always the greatest examples. How many people at work have a a manager or a leader who tells them you better not be late to work, and then every day they're late to work, right? If you want to help your children be the best, then that means you got to be the best. You got to give them the best. If your kids, if you're afraid of them of repeating your mistakes, well, if you don't have those successes, that's probably where they're destined to go, right? But if they see that you've had those successes, if they see that you are that example, that you work hard, that you have that effort, that you're not afraid to be vulnerable, that you're not afraid to, seek God and all those other things, they'll also repeat your successes. They'll also follow you into your successes. They mimic you. They do everything that you want to do. This is why kids often repeat their parents' failures and their successes. Because when kids, all they do is they watch you, and they watch everything you do. They're around you all the time. The way that you talk, they learn to talk the way you talk. They mimic you. They try to do what you do. They try to be just like you. And if you are not living the life that you want them to live, remember, it is not about what you tell them as much as it is what you show them. They will do what you do. They will most likely not do what you say. So if you want holiness and chastity to be important to them, then it has to be important to you. It has to be one of your priorities. If you ask your kids where you spend most of your time, what they believe is important to you, what would they say right now? House, family, work, friends, success, money, your car. Where do you spend most of your time? That's where your kids see what is important to you. What kind of books do you read? What kind of conferences do you attend? What kind of people do you admire? When's the last time you read a book about faith? When's the last time you picked up the Bible? Something that I got to kick my own self in the butt. You have to spend time, like a coach, you have to spend time learning and studying, contemplating, adjusting, seeking new ways. Every single day you have to figure that stuff out. If a coach doesn't read books about coaching and leadership, he's going to lose out on the opportunity to learn from others, and he's destined to make the same mistakes that everybody else makes. If he doesn't study film of his own team, get to know them intimately, then he doesn't know how to help them to improve. If he doesn't study the other team, or in this case the enemy, then he won't know how to prepare them, what to prepare them against. If you don't spend time parenting and learning how to parent, you're going to be destined to make the same mistakes that every other parent makes. If you don't spend that time parenting and learn how to parent, then what you need to do is cut out whatever else it is that is stealing your attention away from that. Whatever you're investing your time and effort into. As I said earlier, the greatest coaches invest in their teams. They spend that time with them. They spend that time learning and studying to help them, but they spend that time with them training them. They don't just tell them to train, they train with them. They're there with them at every single practice. Tim Duncan didn't become Tim Duncan without spending thousands of hours in the gym. You don't become a scientist without spending a decade of learning how to become a scientist. You don't become successful at anything in business or anything in parenting unless you invest everything that you have in that. You pour your time, your energy, everything you have into that. That's the only way you become successful. It takes time, but it takes work to become a better parent and to help them to become better kids. So unless you're willing to do what it takes, I have no advice for you. Too many parents, they gain great success at work and they allow their families to crumble at home. They build these beautiful houses. They get bigger and better houses. And yet their kids at home suffer. They lose their children to the world while they gain so many material things. You have to invest in them. Time and effort. It's not just about what you say to them, it's about what you do. If you show them that they are important, when you spend time with them, and when you spend time working on these things, well, guess what? That's what's going to be important to them too. All right, so this is to the guys. Ephesians 5:25 says, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." You know, we spend all our time and energy when we're younger chasing this girl who captures our heart. This girl that we chase, we end up marrying her. Over time, we become distracted with other things. We start chasing. We chase money, we chase success in our careers, we chase a bigger house or whatever. And that same girl even becomes somewhat of an obstacle, a distraction to the other things that we're chasing. Guys, if you're not still chasing your wife, then you need to give up whatever else it is that's getting in the way, that has distracted you, that made you forget why you initially started chasing her in the first place. Your first vocation is as husband and then as father. I've been chasing the same girl for 10 years now, 6 of those in marriage. Sometimes I get that look in my eye, she sees that look, and then she takes off running. And then I take off running right after her, literally chasing her around the house, trying to smooch her up. That's my lady. One of the saddest things that I see happen to husbands is that they give into this custom of belittling their wives, putting them down, making fun of them. And I'm all for, good jokes, and me and my wife, we poke at each other and stuff like that too. But I also recognize the importance of, for any time that I happen to do that, 5 to 10 more times, I have to raise her up. I got to give her compliments. I got to make sure that everybody around me knows that I love her, that she is that beautiful to me still, that she still means that much to me. And if we ever, sometimes I get it, people jab at their spouse's shortcomings. It's very, very common that men do that with other men and at work and very often in front of their women. And I'm not saying, again, that, a joke or two isn't really that big a deal, but then it becomes kind of this thing that spirals into this idea that, the only way we can really express affection and love for our wives is that if we make fun of them, Your children watch you. And if your children see that this is how you express affection for your wife, then guess what? That is how they believe affection is expressed. How do you think that your son is going to talk to the girl that he likes, that he loves, that he ends up marrying? How do you think that your daughter is going to allow men to talk to her? If your daughter sees that and sees that's how my dad loves my wife, then when a guy treats her like that, she's going to think that that's how he expresses affection. Man, this guy really likes me. But a dad would never stand for that crap, right? A dad's never going to stand for a guy who's constantly belittling and making fun of his daughter in front of everybody else. No way. But yet we do that. We show them that example. I think we do this often because as men, we're afraid to be vulnerable, right? We're afraid to be vulnerable. We talk about things, we joke about things that are hard to talk about. Things that are hard to express. We put ourselves down and we put our wives down because we think that others might do the same. And it's the same reason why fat people often, are comedians and make fun of the fact that they're fat. Because if I make fun of myself before you do, then you don't get the opportunity to make fun of me. If I can humiliate myself more than you, well then guess what? I've taken away your power to jab me where it really hurts, right? It's easier to talk about something embarrassing if you make it a joke. It's very difficult to be vulnerable and honest. Very difficult for a man to show that affection in front of others because he's afraid to be made fun of. Have you seen, maybe you guys have seen Man of La Mancha. This is an old movie. It's actually an old classical play and story. There's a movie where this guy who's got this, he's got these grand dreams of being a knight, right? And he's kind of crazy, but he's got a guy that follows him around. And at one point, there's a scene where he encounters this woman who's dressed in rags, who's sort of kind of like what you would guess, like maybe like a prostitute or something of the sort. But she's obviously a woman who's very used to being treated roughly. And when this crazy guy encounters her, he is overcome with love, and he believes that this is the girl that he was destined to protect. This is the girl, this is the reason for my existence. I'm supposed to protect her and love her and serve her. And he begins to sing to her. He sings this song called Dulcinea. He calls her his sweet one. Dulcinea, I see heaven when I see you, Dulcinea. And then the most wonderful parts, the lyrics of that song, he says, now I found you and the world shall know thy glory, Dulcinea. He wants to show her to the world. Wow! How many men can do that? It's so hard. Even now, it's hard to sing in front of strangers, you know? Men are we're so afraid to be made fun of. And guess what happens in that movie? Immediately after he finished his song, everybody makes fun of him. They all mock the song and sing it, in a very goofy way. But you know what? That woman, as embarrassed as she is at that moment, her heart explodes. And later on in the movie, she seeks him. And she finds him before he dies. And all she can think about is nobody has ever looked at me like that, sang to me like that, called me something like that. And I'm going to guarantee you that every other man, as much as they might make fun of it, every other man is terrified of doing that, but wishes, they have the courage, the guts to be able to do that, to love a woman in that way. We're built that way. It's fear that drives us away from that causes the inaction. Easy to joke, hard to sing, hard to be vulnerable. I make it a point in front of my kids to show affection for my wife. Always I'll tell them, hey guys, don't you think mommy looks beautiful today? Look at her, she's so good, she's awesome, isn't she, guys? And then I start to see that they start doing the same thing. In fact, my oldest son, John Paul, will sometimes go and he mimics me and he'll put his hands on her face and he'll kiss her and I'll be like, hey man, that's my lady. And he'll be like, that's my lady. And we fight, over her. Beautiful. I mean, the girl that gets to marry him is going to be a lucky girl, right? And think about how my daughter sees, her mom being treated. She's the same way. She expects that, once I start talking to her and compliment her, oh, Elizabeth, you're so beautiful. She gets this face and she starts doing this thing, right? Man, you have to strike at that fear of being vulnerable and express the love that has been given to you. Do not be ashamed of that. Here's the message that I'd like to get across to women. I know that you want to protect your kids. I know that you love them. I know that. But stop bailing them out. Stop giving them everything. Stop preventing them from failures, from those mistakes. If men's greatest struggle is that sometimes they're not vulnerable enough, maybe too tough, women are the opposite often. They're not tough enough. Every time that their kid is about to fall, they go and they get them before they have a chance to scratch themselves up. This is one of the greatest failures, I think, of parents. You love your kids. You don't want to see them struggle. You don't want to see them fail. You don't want to see them hurt. But if they never get hurt, if they never suffer, they'll never grow stronger. If they never fail, they will never, ever learn. They will never, ever contemplate, why did I fail? Why am I here? If you bail them out, you take away that opportunity. And I know that's the hardest thing as a parent. This goes for men and women. The hardest thing as a parent and as a mother is to let your kids fail, to let them hurt themselves. They can't learn to walk, though, unless they bump into some stuff, unless they fall down, right? Unless they give it a shot. Discipline isn't just about getting mad when they mess up or when they don't listen. Listen, discipline is about making little disciples. The word comes from the same root, right? It's about training them and pushing them until it hurts. If they don't feel the pain, they never, ever grow. In exercise, it's the same way. Imagine yourself in exercise. If you started exercising, as soon as you started feeling a little bit of pain, you stop. Well, what happens? You can't grow. You don't get stronger. If you play the game, there's an opportunity that you might get hurt. But if you don't play the game, there's also no opportunity to shine, to win the championship. You have to push them. You have to train them. But at some point, you have to let them play the game. This is probably, again, I think the hardest thing to do as a parent. The fear of their failure, of them suffering, drives us to try and bail them out, to protect them from what God has designed to teach them. You are a hindrance to their success. In exercise, the goal is never pain. It's the success. But pain is a necessary part of the process. Failure is a necessary part of success. Because again, it's the way in which we learn. I spoke to a mom once who wanted some advice for her daughter. She had been paying her daughter's college tuition, and she said that she told her daughter that she couldn't afford to pay her tuition anymore, and her daughter was so furious at her. She was so mad because she didn't want to take on student loans and get into debt. And in the conversation, as I'm talking to her, it comes out that she's paying her car payment, that she's living at home for free. She doesn't contribute to groceries or anything like that. But she works. She works, and all her money is her spending money. And so I'm telling her, you need to get her own apartment or something, make her, get her own rent. If she can't afford it yet, then you need to make her pay a reasonable rent, not $10 a month. You need to make her pay some rent. You need to make her pay for that car, or you need to make her sell that car and go get an old beat up car or whatever, right? You need to give her the opportunity to learn how to make it. If she doesn't make it on her own, she's going to always rely on you. That's why she's so mad at you for not continuing to pay her or her college tuition, right? And so I'm telling her all this, and then it comes out. The truth. The truth comes out. She tells me that the reason that she's paying all those things is because she's terrified that her daughter's going to run away again. If she tells her daughter that she's got to pay for her own car, if she tells her she's got to get her own apartment, if she tells her she's got to contribute, whatever it is, if she tells her she's afraid that she's going to get mad and run away again. She had been away for years. And for years, she missed out on her life. And she felt like, I want her here. I missed out on so much of this. I just want her here. And I feel like if I do that, I'm so afraid that she's going to run out. She's going to run away. This, again, the fear is what drives these things, right? My advice was still, you need to do that. And yes, I know she may run away. She might leave. She might be upset. But here's the thing. Something that we don't really think about in the book of Genesis is we have the tree of knowledge, the tree in the garden, right? God put that tree there. God put that tree there. The same tree that Adam and Eve ate from, the same tree they weren't supposed to eat from, the same tree that ultimately was the cause of their death. And God put it there. Why? Why did God put it there? Because he wanted them to be free. And there's no freedom without a choice. If they had no choice, they couldn't make the right choice. There's no freedom without the ability for choice. He wanted them to love, but you cannot love unless you can choose to love, unless there's an option to choose to not love. He wanted them to stay, but they needed the option to be able to leave. Ultimately, he put that tree there because he wanted them to shine, to win, but there is no winning without the potential for losing. There is no game unless there's a potential to win or to lose. Are you a better parent than God? No. Yet, his kids left, they disobeyed, and essentially ran away. His kids died. A God who could have prevented all of that allowed it for the sake of freedom and love. Your kids need to see your example, and then, like a coach, you need to let them play the game. This is why in the games, the coach has to stand on the sidelines. They cannot play the game for the kids. They must watch from the sidelines. They can prep them, they can yell and scream from the sidelines, but at some point that last shot has to be taken by them. The coach does not get to play the game. The coach must watch. But in those moments when the game is on the line, when the potential for failure exists, when they could lose, become humiliated or whatever, in those moments there's also this opportunity that they might take the last shot and make it and win the championship. And you and them together will both throw up your hands in celebration, and you will never ever feel more proud of them than in that moment. And if you don't let them have the freedom to play the game, to have that moment, you will steal that away from them. You will steal it away from yourself. There's no secret sauce. Maybe you thought I was going to come and tell you what to say to them. No, there's no secret sauce. It is about how you're living your life, where you're spending your time, how you invest, and then ultimately their journey and yours. Your journey is not theirs. Their journey is not yours. In the end, you may lose control, or rather, you might give control up. But you can be confident that there is someone who is in control. There is a greater purpose. There is a God, there is a Father who is greater, who has left behind for you a legacy of pain, of suffering, of death, and ultimately of resurrection and glory. Your job as parents is to leave behind that same legacy for your children. Before I end, I do want to say that, as speakers, sometimes it takes us some time to figure out how to effectively share our message. When we share our story, usually it starts off, kind of emotional vomit, right? I went through this, I did this, oh my gosh, this person did this to me, whatever, right? We figure out sometimes how to better express the story that God has given us. And, at the beginning of mine, I used to just kind of throw it out there, all the mistakes that my parents made that might have somehow contributed to, who I was and the way that I was. And of course, now I'm learning how to say that respectfully and learn, and take on a lot more of that responsibility. But I don't always get a chance to speak in an area where my parents can be there. So I want to take this opportunity to honor them and to say that I wouldn't be where I was, or I am now, without them making me believe that I could do all of this, that I have the ability, the talents, and ultimately that God has given me a greater purpose. I love the example that my parents have given for me, even if their example didn't start off the greatest. It's true, I gotta say the truth. Even if they didn't, I am so, so proud to have the father that I have, the mother that I have. And I'm so honored for the way that they have coached me and given me this, this opportunity to be here, to do all this stuff. Without them, none of this happens. So thank you, Dad and Mom. I love you guys.